Okay, it's recording. Okay, so just talk a little loud, that way I can make sure I can hear you okay, which is not a problem for you.
And that's why people think I'm yelling at them, but I'm deaf, so it's like, golly.
Okay, so how many times per week, monthly basis, weekly basis, yearly basis, are y'all running into these undocumented immigrants?
Lately it's been more. There's no specific number per week. In a year, we do over 100, hundreds of immigrants. There's probably this year alone, and we're only in the month of August, has been probably 150 to 200 uh, illegal immigrants that are being smuggled in to the United States just in our little 3 mile strip of interstate.
So are you noticing more than previous years? I know y'all have been doing this for a while now, but has 2021 been the most you've seen in a while?
Yes, there's been an influx in the number of people coming illegally down our highways. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess you would say.
Do you know why you're seeing more?
I think we're seeing more because there's the border is just overwhelmed. So what they see is a chance for avoidance. You know, while the focus is on the people walking across, they can get their cargo, and that's what they call it, cargo across, and then they can commingle their cargo. While it's being the emphasis being forced on people, they can also mix drugs with the human trafficking that they're doing at the same time. So it gives them a double whammy to make money because it's all about money.
So when you're seeing these drivers who are smuggling these humans, walk us through what that's like as a local officer, the impact that seeing this and dealing with this is having.
Some of the things we've seen, at least in our area, that's made this a problem is that the people who are smuggling these people into the United States, they don't care what happens to them. So, in order to make that quick turnaround dollar, if they stop at our truck stop and they dump out their cargo or tell them to stretch their legs, they'll turn around and leave to go pick up another set of people. So they're doubling their money down. So what happens is the people are left with nothing. They're here with no contact, no people. The jobs they were promised aren't there. And then the next thing you know, you have these people wandering around. We've had that happen a lot. We've had it happen to where people are hurt during their border crossing, and a citizen will notice, they'll call that in and saying this person's limping, they were forced into the vehicle. So those are things that we're seeing more of.
So when you are seeing, these signs of human smuggling, I mean, what's like the first step? I mean, you want to talk about this? What's the first step? You're driving by, you're seeing this, you get a phone call, then what's next?
Well, the next step is contact.
Contact, yeah. I've had just this year I've had 2 calls for reckless driver, and both of those have been human smugglers where it's been on 1-on-3, or the second one was I believe it was another one on, was it 1-on-3, I believe. And it's just reckless drivers calls and just making contact and just figuring out what's going on inside the vehicle.
So what things are you looking out for when you do get these calls, or even if you're driving down? I mean, what kind of things do you notice?
Just talking to the driver, talking to the passengers. Most of the time the passengers aren't going to speak English. Talking to the driver, pulling them out, separating them from the passengers, and then just kind of getting the feel for what's going on inside the vehicle as well. Most of the time the passengers are going to have like what's called go bags, so they're not going to have they're going to have personal clothes, change of clothes, and just like daily clothes, change of clothes, and toothpaste and stuff like that. And then they're not going to know who the driver is, or the driver's not going to know them, or they're not going to even speak the language.
A huge indicator that has happened in as of late, and it continues to be an indicator, is when you go up and you get a reckless driver call, or they're called about the welfare of a passenger. They'll notice that a passenger looks scared, frightened, or the driver's yelling at them. When you go up and you ask the passengers a question, are you okay? And the driver answers automatically for the passengers. He doesn't let the passengers speak. The passenger's looking down at the floorboard. There's no eye contact. There's no body movement. They're scared to talk to you. So you ask him again, are you okay? Where you headed? And the driver always answers for them. Cuts them off, doesn't let them speak a word. And then when you say, let them speak, they're like, well, they don't speak any English, or they don't understand what you're saying. That is the biggest clue that I've seen that those people are not in a good position, or they're being smuggled. And it's especially true in children. You know, children are always glad to see you. They're curious in 90% of our traffic stops. But when you got children who bury their head down in their lap and you ask them, are you okay? Are you doing okay? You know, and they will not make any contact, and the person automatically cuts off and answers. That's a clue. That's a pretty good clue that that person's there against their will or they're being smuggled.
So when you guys take them into your custody, if they are, you know, the driver or the people smuggling them, or even just the undocumented immigrants, what's next? You interview them, you try to investigate. I mean, walk me through the process.
If we believe they're being smuggled, we contact our resident Border Patrol agents. That we have 2 agents that are here in this district. They'll respond or they'll talk to us over the phone. We'll send them the folks who are being smuggled information. They will tell us, yes, they are in the country illegally. They go ahead and they process an immigration detainer, and they're transported to a local facility, usually the county jail, until they can figure out where to transport them to get them back. The smugglers, that's a different story. We team up with Border Patrol, Homeland Security, and ourselves. We'll do an interview of the victims, and then we'll also do an interview of the actual coyote or the person, the driver, to see what parts of the puzzle we can put together. Usually when you separate the victim from the smuggler, you get to the truth, and you know which questions to ask, and you know the signs. You've done it long enough that you see it, and the biggest thing is usually how it's dissected. That person didn't directly pay that person. So when you ask them, did you pay, was this person paid? Well, that person was out of the loop. They paid in the country of origin. So they have no idea. Or they're going to work it off for the next 10 years, you know, through a business, a company, or whatever.
So walk us through, why is Tye seeing the majority of this? Other surrounding areas in the big country might not be dealing with as many cases or calls. Why does it seem to be on Tye's PD's lap?
I think what brings this more to the forefront here is we have the largest truck stop in a 5-county area. We have a highway that runs all the way from El Paso to North Carolina. 66,000 people a day pass down I-20. 4,000 people a day pass down 707. Tye is a small community of less than 2,000, but when you add up and you say under the criminal justice theory you deal with 10% of those people, that's a lot of people in one day, whether it be for motorist assist, whether it be reckless driver, whether it be a vehicle violation. Our job is to protect our citizens and the visitors of this community. So I think why we see it more is we have the interstate and the crossroads of 707, which will run deeper into Texas. The interstate runs to Dallas, other big cities. So with the truck stop here, you got to get fuel. People got to eat, they got to drink, things like that. They have their tactics to make their victims not have to use the restroom as much and things like that. We're aware of those. But the thing that comes in, and the thing I think that we're so fortunate is we have a citizenry that recognizes when something's out of the ordinary, such as they're driving down the road and they see heads pop up in a van and they're adults. They know something's wrong. So they call that in. So we do a check welfare. We make contact. Reckless drivers calls. We don't just go looking for people being smuggled. There's always a tie to there was a law broken somewhere that the reason for that stop. We just don't know that they're smuggling people, but it usually leads to the signs and indicators that we can dissect later.
Definitely. So does this add extra stress to the department here, or is this something that you guys are happy to take on?
Well, I think that's a dual-edged sword. Does it add extra stress? Does it add time and consumption of man hours? Yes. Is it something that we're happy to take on? I think that the first time you experience somebody who's being trafficked and promised a job, but they're going to have to work there for 16 years to pay back what they have, that's nothing but indentured slavery or modern day slavery. So when you see that on somebody's face, when they tell you what they've been promised and you know it's nothing but human slavery, yeah, we're happy to take it on, because I believe we're not just getting people back to their homeland. I believe we're saving their lives. When you see a little kid who, when you ask whose child this is, and that child's head's buried into the asphalt, and they say that their mother died in Guatemala, kids have emotions. They'll show that. And you know that it's not true based on just the emotion that child's saying. You know that child's headed to something bad for the rest of their life. If you look at the statistics, the children crossing the border are not tied to the people they're crossing it with. So what are they headed to? I believe, yeah, it is time consuming. It is tireless. It weighs heavy on your mind what happens to these people. But I truly believe we're saving lives in the process, as well as saving our community. Because if you throw someone out at the truck stop and they have nothing or no one in this country, they have to survive. So it's going to lead them to begging. It's going to lead them to prostitution. It's going to lead them to stealing. It's going to lead to things that are just going to attribute to a bad community. Our job is to have a safer community. There's people that might say, hey, this isn't your business to do this. My job is to protect my community. My job is to protect my visitors. So it's a double-edged sword for us. But at the end of the day, I always look at those people, and I've been told from those people that you probably saved my life. And especially with kids. You know, kids don't have a choice. You know, kids are sold. And sex trade start at $10,000. So when you look at those things and you look at yourself and say, did this take a lot of my time? Did I get home late today? But think about the impact that you had in their life. So it does take man hours. It does take something. But what happens when these people have nowhere else to go? When no one's looking at them? Who's going to take advantage of them? So you like to think that you're saving their lives plus protecting your community at the same time.
Definitely. Do you mind walking us through some things that you kind of learned through this
Well,
process?
this is a small example of something that has keyed us for folks who don't know what these are. These are called carpet shoes. So this is when people cross the border. Humans, they don't leave human footprints. So they just leave the print of this. So there's departments that have specialized in human trafficking. So there's no footprints to these. These were actually taken from a smuggling group that had 15 humans in them with one coyote. They had just crossed the border about 9 hours prior. Due to the pattern, and they wear full body suits like this, we can tell you who did it, what organization did it, and where they originated from. So there's certain things that each group uses as a signature, because the name of the game is money. It's not about people. They don't care what happens to these people. They care about how quick they make their money. And in the United States, there seems to be this belief that everybody crossing the border is from Mexico. That's not true. We see people from Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, Dominican Republic, China, the Middle East. It's every race, shape of people that you've seen. Women are more money than men. You know, for a person to come from Mexico, the average price is about $1,000. When you start getting into Guatemalans and Hondurans, you're talking thousands, 5,000, 6,000. When you even mention the sex trades, it's $10,000. So, you know, you got to put that into perspective. And I think where we're good is our citizens and the folks who travel this highway have very good situational awareness. They're aware that's what's going on around them. And in one case that we actually worked, they noticed that a female was in tears and getting yelled at the driver. And those 3 females were being brought into the country illegally, which we believe was in a sex trade. They wouldn't admit to that. But you look back on that and say, what did you save them from? Yes, it took time. It took hours. But what would happen to them if they were just left in the community or left wherever their destination was?
Definitely. Do you mind kind of sharing what you have maybe gotten from this so far? I know that you've learned a lot through this process and have kind of become an expert in this trade of what to look for. I mean, just kind of walk us through, like, your experience.
So, I guess, I mean, Chief calls me the expert, but I mean, really, I just go out there, patrol, just do my job. I just notice, you know, violations. The common indicator is most likely going to be paper tags. They use paper tags that are freshly made or falsely made and stuff like that. I network with other agencies network with us. They call us, we're the primary person they call because they know we work the Interstate 2. It's just going out there and looking for the bad guy. I mean, looking for violations and stuff like that. Just go out there and patrol, pretty much.
So, as you have been with Tye PD, how many of these instances have you come across yourself?
Talking about smugglers.
Smugglers, human trafficking.
Ooh, I've lost count already.
A bunch. It's a bunch.
Heck, I'd say over 20, for sure.
Yeah, over 20 different incidents.
Yeah, over
And
20
it
different
depends on the size of the load. I mean,
It could be over. It could be between 3 to 15 people.
if you sit down and look, and I really do think that this is the case, and I think that the instances are much higher than they used to be. And what we've noticed now is there's an influx because it's about money. So what they're doing now is, instead of putting a smuggler in the vehicle, they'll just give the vehicle to the people who are trying to cross. So you'll get a van of 20 people, and the guy driving it is an illegal immigrant, but the company or the business, and I call it a company because that's what they're set up just like a normal business, has given them this van and said, hey, drive this highway all the way, it'll take you to Dallas. Because the business is so good right now that they don't want to risk themselves. They just give them the vehicle to go. And there's certain things that we notice. If you work the interstate, and Tye is called Tye because it's tied together by 707 and Interstate 20. So it's a crossroads. So we have people cutting off to go to San Angelo. We have people cutting off to go north. So they go everywhere. We've noticed from smugglers, we've caught smugglers who were taking people to Indiana, New Jersey, Boston, New York, and their logbooks show these things. But what we're seeing now is business is so good that they just venture them out, and the more they throw at it, if they get 6 people through out of 20, they've made their money. You know, and the results is just crazy. When you go to try, when you're out, the purpose of radar is deterrence to speed, but when you're out there and you pull up and someone's speeding and you pull them over and 15 heads pop up, you know, you have a pretty good idea that that's not normal. And, or you go up and check a driver's license and you shine your flashlight back and everybody's laying down dressed in camouflage. That's a clue, but you have to decipher. You can't just say, well, they're automatically being smuggled. You've got to know what questions to ask and who to contact. We are so fortunate because we have great Border Patrol and Homeland Security officers that have assisted us from everything. The first time I ever dealt with it, I was blown away with it. I have the same mindset that, you know, oh, the people are just coming to take our jobs. These people are promised a dream that doesn't exist. And when they share with you what they've been promised, and it's going to take 16 years to achieve, and maybe another 10 if their spouse comes, you know it's all a big lie. So they're coming to the unknown, and you've got to ask. These are still human beings. We dealt with a group that have been smuggled. It was a very, very large group. They hadn't been fed in 3 days. 3 days, and they were under this people's control. But for 3 days, they didn't feed them. The only thing in their parking lot, in their pockets, was a piece of garlic and diarrhea medicine. That's the only 2 things they had to eat. So people tell you that this is about human beings looking for a better way of life, but the people who are doing it are the problem. They're making money off their fellow human beings, and they don't care what happens to these people. If they make it, they make it. If they don't, they don't. And that's the way they look at it. It's a product. They even call them products in the statements that they make, and when you interview them, they'll talk about products, if they talk to you at all.
So when you have talked to these people who are in charge of making these deliveries, they're not showing remorse, they're not showing...
No, it's a business.
So how does this impact the big country? How does this impact Texas?
But what do you know, that's a question I throw back to you. The answer is really easy. What happens to 12 people, 12 grown people that need to survive? You know, if they're just dumped in Taylor County, how are they supposed to make it? What resources are available to them? What is it going to lead to? They're going to survive. That's the human instinct. You're going to survive. Or you're going to become dependent on that community or that culture. But unfortunately, they're going to have to take means that might not be legal means to survive. They might be put in that situation by whoever dropped them off to start dealing drugs, prostitution, things like that. Those are things that we don't know. But the impact is huge because you're going to have people with no means to exist. And somebody is going to have to pay, whether it's tax dollars or property or whatever, for these people that are getting dumped or these people that are getting trafficked.
So do you think that there's people who were smuggled by the cartel, or people who are currently working for the cartel who are in the big country?
I don't know that answer. I mean, I'm sure it's like anything else. It's possible, you know. If we knew that data, I'm sure they wouldn't be operating. I mean, there's some great law enforcement in this community, and I've watched them do great things in the drug communities, and I'm sure that would be outed. But I'm sure there's an intel circle somewhere that, you know, and that's something that's being discovered every day. You know, you can't just move thousands of people down the interstate. You have to wait and do it at a certain time. And the best way to do it is you overload the system. And that's what we're seeing now. Send 20 cars, and if you get 19 cars through, then you've succeeded. If we catch one, they're not out anything but one car. And that's a tool that Governor Abbott, the state of Texas, has given us, is the Chapter 59 asset seizure, asset forfeiture. When we catch their vehicles, we seize them. We don't put them back out on the streets for them to use to smuggle more people. We seize them. They don't get them back. And we have a hearing to see, you know, if it was all under legal means, but they do not get their property back. That property then goes up and it's sold because they should not profit off the smuggling of other human beings.
So what do you think is the most important thing that big country residents need to understand about the reality of the situation we're in here?
Probably the most important thing I would say is these are human beings. The reality of it is what they're told and sold is not what's happening. I was of the naivete belief that people were just coming over here to take jobs. But after doing this for so long, since Agent Donna Doss got here in 2017 and dealing with this, I've actually seen they're not taking jobs. They're promised jobs with companies. They're not promised pay. Sometimes they don't even pay to get over here. They're promised employment for 10 years, 15 years, sometimes 20 if they promise to get their family over here later, and a place to stay, which might be one bedroom in cases we've been told. But they have to work at that place for 20 years. So the basic bottom line is that they're not coming to take my job. They're not coming to take the guy's job that's working at the Flying J. They're coming to an existing company. So that supply and demand is there. Those employers know what they're getting. They're getting free labor, and they're getting slave labor or indentured servitude for however many years. And when the people believe that that's what they're coming to, but when they find out it's not, and when you look up the company that they promised and it doesn't exist, there's great sadness in that. Because what are they headed to? If you wouldn't have caught that, what were they headed to? What was the true events? I don't know. And then you hear from other cases where people are kept in closets, locked up, and things like that, entered into the sex trade, children sold for $25,000 and $30,000. You look back and said, hey, hopefully I stopped that today. Even if it's just one. You know, I can't change the past, but we can sure try to change the future of these people. And that's our goal. Yeah, some people say you shouldn't be out there and you shouldn't be doing this. We're not out looking for people entering this country illegal. That's not our job. But when we make a traffic stop and they're there, we're sure going to make sure the well-being for everybody, whether it be the community, whether it be the people that are being smuggled. But I think what we should understand is this. People wouldn't want to come here if the opportunity didn't exist. And in most cases that I've seen, it's a promised opportunity from somebody who's already in business. It's not that they're going to go to your local business and apply for a job. They already know where they're going. There's more people going there, and that person or that corporation is profiteering from their labor. They're not gaining anything. And the money they do make, which is very minuscule in some cases, is sent back home because those people still have to survive. Or they're promised if they work this long, then we'll bring your wife over and you do 2 more years. We've heard that how many times? It's sad. There's great sadness in that. Or when you see a child and you find out that child is not tied to anybody else in that vehicle, but the person told you that that was their son or daughter. And then you know pretty much what's going on, you know. And we have great agents that deal in that and that have proven that and have protected these kids when it's happened.
In most cases, what do these kids end up doing? That
You know,
of?
the truth of the matter is I don't have that answer. I know that they do a great job making sure and trying to find their parents, which was contrary to what was put out there. I've seen it firsthand. They try to find their family, but I know they don't end up in the sex trade or in the drug trade. That I know for sure, and I know they're protected.
So once that you catch them or local law enforcement realizes the situation, the kids that don't make it through, they're not going into sex trafficking or human trafficking. But if they do make it through, that's a possibility for those
Very
kids.
much so a possibility, especially when we look at age. You know, an 8-year-old that's unaccompanied, who are they going to? And they say they have no family here. I mean, you got to figure that out for yourself. And from doing this long enough, you become dyspeptic. You know, you're just, I don't know, you're just leery of everything. And that one there sings off every alarm in your head. You know, the thing I think that people need to know is the risk that these people take. And I'm not saying, yes, it's their choice, but they're promised something that they don't even, half of them don't even realize that it's against the law, or, you know, or the way it's happening. But you got to realize, when a woman crosses the border, you know, statistics show she's raped 59 times. She's sexually assaulted 59 times. I don't care if you enter the country legally or illegally, no one deserves that. So if I, as a police officer, took an ethical, legal obligation can prevent one of those, then I'm very happy with my performance at the end of the day. I'm very happy with his performance at the end of the day. It might not be a popular performance. People might not say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. But they don't have to look them in the eyes and say, hey, you're okay today. When you take a woman and you take her into custody and she tells you she hasn't eaten for 3 days, and you watch her eat a bologna sandwich and a bottle of water like she hasn't eaten before, you've done good. Because the same people that have kept her for 3 days, what are they going to do to her for the rest of their life? I don't know. But I think it's our responsibility to ensure it doesn't happen.
Especially if it's coming through your community.
Correct. Because what's going to happen to them in our community if they get dropped off here, if it starts here, if there's a house here, if there's anything for them here? What happens to my citizens? You know, you got to ask that question.
Definitely. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Is there anything else that you can think of that we might have missed?
No.
I think we did it all. Thank you guys.
I think you should come back, though.
Yeah, I would love